some ways in which the word aware approach is being used in schools and settings across the region. So as Kat said, I'm Becky, or sometimes called Rebecca if I'm in a more formal setting or you want to email me. I work in the communication intervention team. So just this slide just really recaps on what we understand. You know, we've got this wide recognition that vocabulary needs to be addressed, and that in particular vocabulary skills can play a key role in reducing that gap in educational attainment, particularly between groups of pupils from different social economic backgrounds. And in recent years, there's been a growing consensus around what good vocabulary instruction should consist of, and I think that's summarised quite well in those two quotes, research quotes on the slide there for you to read. And word aware it's a really structured whole school approach, and it was written by two speech and language therapists, Stephen Parsons and Anna Brannigan, and their approach has all been trialled and developed in light of the research literature. You know, they review it all the time, and they've applied the principles of the research findings into their classroom strategies and approaches as the word aware materials have been developed. They always have kept in mind that research evidence base. And I just wanted to say really that the key approach that defines word aware is it's whole school, it's all pupils, but it might have a particular value for pupils who start at a disadvantage, including those children with developmental language disorder or additional learning needs, as well as those pupils who start or who speak English as an additional language. But it will extend the word learning of all pupils, and that's the key sort of principle of the approach. So there are 3 word aware books, and they're designed to form a complete package for schools to support all word learners from the ages of 3 through to 11 years. But the resources can easily be adapted for older children, and I'm not sure if we have secondary colleagues here today, but we have trained, one of our word aware trainers is from a secondary context and is adapting and using the materials in her school. So lots of the resources and the approaches you would be able to adapt for older children. And I just wanted to also draw your attention to the link that's on the slide there, because when you get a copy of this PowerPoint, that's an active link that takes you to the Word Aware website, which has got obviously then links to lots of additional materials, to their website, to the place where you can purchase the manuals. And each book, it's really worth, if it's an approach you want to take into school, it's worth getting hold of each of the manuals. They all come with a companion website. You need to have the book to access that, and then it's straightforward. You log on and there's a host, a real big array of materials online ready for you to download. Those include some of the materials that are in the book, so in a PDF version, so it's easy for you to download and make use of in the classroom straight away, and lots of additional resources. Some which might be helping you to organise and deliver staff training if you wanted to disseminate the key messages. There are recordings, particularly for that Word Aware 3 book. There's a whole recording of a staff training session that you could run, and all the materials you need to do that. So it's really worth making sure, if you buy the books, access the companion website and download and save all of the additional materials. And just to draw your attention to the Word Aware 1 book, the orange book on the left. Some of our schools might have been doing Word Aware for a long time and may have the first edition of that book. It's recently been updated, and it's really worth getting hold of the second edition because it's expanded content, and again the additional material on the website is really valuable. So I just wanted to show you the Word Aware 3 book, which again is fairly new, and it's designed to help us set up, if you wanted to think about teaching vocabulary in small groups for children ages 6 to 11, this gives you a really practical amount of information that you can use, lots of advice and support on how to set up an implementation of a small group, perhaps intervention, but you could use it within the class as well, or it could be for particular children having a time limited extra small group session, but it is designed to complement what would be your whole class and whole school approach to developing vocabulary. And again, that companion website has just got everything you need in order to make good use of that book. So it's worth making sure you get hold of that material. So we're going to look now, just going to think about the principles and share with you the underlying principles of the word-aware approach. And the overarching principle is that all children will benefit if they're exposed to an enriched vocabulary within an environment where the spoken and written word are appreciated, and if the children have opportunities to enjoy words, and the staff as well. You know, if we carry that message that we enjoy words, we have fun with words, we know that can obviously influence and support children's word learning. But also a key principle is for children to experience the explicit teaching of useful words, which are the most useful words for these children at this point in time. That's an approach that word-aware really help us to think about. And the importance of learning and teaching strategies to ensure that our learners become independent word learners. And you can see on the slide there, then they break down each of their word-aware principles, and in the books there's a lot of extra content and details to bring those principles to life, but I won't go into too much detail now. You can get a good sense of what the word-aware principles are from looking at those bullet points on the slide. So this slide illustrates quite nicely the whole school word-aware approach, working in partnership with families. You can see the mountain analogy helps us to think about where do we start at the base, what's base camp, as it were, and the first starting point is first to think about it as a whole school approach, very much supported by and working in partnership with families, because we know that no one child will learn their vocabulary from any one person. So it's all about involving all the adults in school and families and all the adults who surround the child to really be part of this approach to developing vocabulary in its widest sense as much as possible. So then working up the mountain, we can see 3 clear steps to creating the goal of effective word learners. That's the aim, to get to the top of the mountain where our pupils are confident and effective word learners. And step 1 is all about getting children and adults excited about words. So having fun with words, celebrating words, making word learning a tangible part of children's learning experiences. And we will hear a little bit more about this aspect from Lorna, hopefully later in the presentation. Step 2 is the teaching of words, the direct teaching. So the second step in the word-aware approach is that direct teaching of vocabulary, and exposing children to a language learning environment we know is really key, but it's not enough to promote vocabulary development. It might be enough for those students with really good vocabulary learning skills already, but with their peers who perhaps have poor vocabulary, or then that simple exposure is just not enough. So it's important that we explicitly teach important or useful words, and that we take into account the breadth and depth of that teaching and the words that we focus on. And this slide illustrates again the word-aware approach. They use the acronym of STAR, which helps us to think about a cycle of teaching when we're identifying those useful and important words. So that first element is the selection of words. Then they give very, very good practical ways in which we can explicitly teach the words, making them multisensory, making them visited in many places, thinking about the different elements of the word learning. So really thinking about what does it mean to really know that word as part of our teaching cycle. And then the A stands for activate. So once the word is used, is taught, then we want to use that word in contexts, in meaningful contexts to the child. So in the moment, in the classroom teaching, that might be through a sort of a topic approach, or through your literacy. It might be conceptual learning through first-hand experience. We want children to really reactivate their knowledge of that word in meaningful contexts. And then we want to keep that word on the boil, as we're very familiar with the importance of reviewing learning. So in word-aware, they use a word bag in the early years, or a word pot, and they use a word wall, places, very practical teaching supports where you can make sure that word is revisited, reviewed, and that learning is kept on the boil. And the bottom quote there also I wanted to draw your attention to, because evidence really shows that including both the phonological and the semantics and the meaning aspects of a word, and if we include activities that highlight the knowledge that's needed of those 2 elements of word learning, that's the most effective way to promote word learning. So as you can see in the teach box there, those steps of a teach cycle help us to draw attention to both the phonological and the semantic information of new words as we're teaching them directly. And the third step in the word aware approach is teaching children independent word learning strategies. And I've just given a smattering of some of the resources that are contained in the word aware approach around this particular third step. So it's estimated, and widely sort of quoted, that perhaps the average adult knows about 30,000 words, and even more in, obviously, in some research they might find that that's even more. So a sort of a rough estimate of at least 30,000 words known by the average adult. And that would mean the children would have to add about 7 new words a day to their vocabulary, and we can't possibly teach children every one of those words. So most words in our vocabulary will be learned independently. No one really teaches us those words. We learn them through exposure, through experience, and some children will find that word learning journey easier than others. But this word aware approach helps us to put in place a structure that means that we can support all children to become word learners. And as I say on the slide there, it really just gives you a flavour of the practical nature of the resources that you get once you implement the word aware approach to develop children and the strategies that they need to be known as and feel like independent word learners. So it's that whole cycle of teaching, and the mountain analogy helps us to think about those 3 steps working together all the time as we implement a whole school approach. So that's a whistle-stop tour through word aware. Yes, and Vicky's now we have set up for a number of years now. We have a COMIT Hub network. I hope that everyone on the call is already a member, but if not, the link on the slide there is an invitation for you to join our network. We use this to share updates from COMIT broadly for all of the aspects that COMIT support with. So it's a really good sort of information sharing platform, but we've also got a file section in there and a word aware folder within that, as you can see on the screen, where we try to share links to online materials. So there's an example of what it looks like at the moment, some of the materials that are in there. The first of those is a Pinterest board, and that one link alone can lead you down a whole rabbit hole of word aware activities and ways to get excited about developing vocabulary. So we hope it's a good resource. So this is my invitation for you to please join our COMIT Hub network if you're not already. And thank you. I'm wrapping up now, but I just wanted to share one example. This is a really hopefully useful resource that is available for download on that companion website I mentioned at the start. This is on the Word Aware one. We had lots of schools back in 2019 attended the initial training for Word Aware, and then since then we've done some further training, and we know that there's across, there are lots of schools who are making use of the Word Aware approach, but we also are well aware that lots of our whole school plans have either been disrupted or put on hold. So you may be in the position that your school is using Word Aware, or you used it a couple of years ago, but you wanted to have a fresh look at how was your implementation. And this is a useful audit that can help, you might want to just be aware of, that can help you to think about, well, how word aware is our school currently? You might be looking to refresh your implementation. And this just gives you a really nice prompt, a specific prompts to think about your physical environment, the spoken environment, the specific teaching strategies. So using that STAR approach that we talked about earlier. So there's good prompts here on this audit that you don't need to go through all of them, but it might give you a basis for just starting that refreshed look across the school if you want to think about your implementation. And if you have any follow-up inquiries or queries, please use the email address for the COMIT team, and look forward to hearing from you in the future.